Chair and members of council, my name is Lucia Camalato and I'm the license coordinator with licenses and inspections. Before you today we have the applicant Mr. Jasper Morgan, who's requesting a council resolution endorsing his application for a 300-seat non-alcohol cabaret at 1062 Granville Street. Council policy for new applications for non-alcohol cabarets is limited to the Granville Street Theatre Row entertainment districts in the 7, 8, and 900 blocks of Granville Street and in the Central Business District. Council has designated the 1000 block of Granville Street as a local shopping area and as a transition area by deleting pubs and cabarets from the zoning and allowing restaurant class 2 in order to allow some low impact entertainment. A bit of the background is the applicant's proposal is to provide a venue in the 1000 block of Granville where on weekends people can continue to dance and socialize after the liquor license establishments and cabarets have closed down. The non-alcohol cabaret will be located in the basement of 1062 Granville Street, which is located outside of the policy area. Non-alcohol cabarets are excluded from Granville Street Theatre Row Entertainment District liquor license policy and are not included in the overall seat count. Any decision on this application will not impact council liquor policy for the district. However, council's decisions should consider that the processes for non-alcohol cabarets is located outside of the policy area and the potential street impacts of this establishment when operating in conjunction with the other existing and proposed establishments in the entertainment district. The only other two non-alcohol cabarets in the city are located at 816 Granville and 695 Smythe. The subject site is located in the downtown zoning district, which is half a block south of the designated entertainment district. The surrounding area is a mixture of retail, office, hotel, hostel, restaurant, cabaret, and pub uses, and a significant number of residential buildings. We conducted a neighborhood notification and by circulating 2,000 notices in the survey area, and a site sign was erected advising the community of the application and where to send concerns or comments. Out of this notification, we received one telephone message in support and one telephone message was received with concerns. 7 emails were received opposing the request, and 1 letter and 1 fax was also received opposing the request. And most of the respondents that responded to this notification were opposing the application because of their concerns with the establishment's close proximity to the entertainment district, including increased noise, concerns for safety, and increased nuisance issues for the community. With respect to the policy, there's 3 policy issues which relates to this application. One being the location of the venue, which does not meet council's approved guidelines for locations of new application for late night hours, non-alcohol dance halls, which are limited to the Granville Street Entertainment District and to the Central Business District. The second one relates to council policy establishing the 1000 block as a transition area, which would only allow low impact uses. And the other issue relates to the requested seating capacity of 300, which is well above council approved guidelines of 200 seats. Staff is not supportive of a venue of this size. On reviewing the positive aspects of the application, staff feel that a viable after-hours operation would help ease the demand for illegal late-night venues throughout the city, which are often held in unsafe and dangerous premises. Some of the negative aspects of this application are the concerns with the size of the venue and potential impact on the street, the venue being located outside of the policy area, and additional police resources which may be required of this establishment when operating outside of the area. Other department concerns where the Vancouver Police Department does not support the application. The addition of another after-hours club at this time would only add to the existing problems and resource issues that are presently being addressed by the Police Department. The Development Services Department, Social Planning Department, and Central Area Planning Department do not support the application due to conflicts with Council's policy and applicable guidelines. The Housing Center has some concerns around the noise and the late night operation. And the other community department, commenting departments generally support the application with some conditions. So in concluding, generally staff would recommend approval of this type of application if it met Council's policy. However, in this situation, the application does not meet Council's policy. Therefore, staff recommend that Council not endorse the request for the approval of the non-alcohol cabaret at 1062 Granville.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions from Council at this point, so I'd like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Jasper Morgan, and just a reminder to all speakers that you have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jasper Morgan, and I am the applicant for this proposed non-alcohol after-hours venue at 1062 Granville. When I approached the licensing department about almost a year ago now regarding this application, I expressed to them that I understood that it was outside of the area that the city was looking to have these clubs operate in. I, in fact, am the applicant who applied for the previous license and was granted one on the corner of Smythe and Granville in downtown Vancouver. That application went in on 2002. Since then, I've actually been looking in the 700, 800, and 900 blocks and in the expanded CBD area for suitable locations for this type of business, and have been frustrated with the dearth of available venues and suitable venues, because I think it's more important to take into consideration that the city doesn't want me to just open this kind of business just because it happens to be in the right area. The suitability of the building and of the space within the building certainly should make a lot of difference and should be of consideration to Council. And I believe what I've done here by bringing this proposal forward is bringing together the best location that I can find. I understand that it's a half a block outside the area. My argument is that while it's regrettable, the 1000 block is a de facto part of the entertainment zone and is just as noisy as the 900 block on any given weekend. This business only operates on the weekend. It doesn't serve alcohol. It's not contributing to the scourge, I believe, of the alcohol problem on Granville Street. And it actually offers potentially, especially if there's more of these venues allowed to exist, it offers a place for people to actually go to sober up before they drive. The city, in some ways, I believe, is being a little irresponsible in having all these alcohol venues combined together, seeing to it that the only place you can go dance are places that are actually making money on serving you alcohol, so that there's sort of a push towards having people who want to dance drink, and then telling all those people that they have to leave at 3 a.m., pushing them out onto the street and not offering them any place to go to sober up, and in a sense causing a lot of people to go and get into their cars when they really shouldn't be. Now, after hours, the goal of after hours is not entirely as a place for people to go and sober up. These clubs are in demand. The last club I built has been busy since day one and is actually getting $40 a head to get in. Now, that says to me, in conjunction with the fact that it's always lined up and never advertises, that this is a very popular business and serves a real niche market in the city. There hasn't been any significant incidents any more than any regular club with after hours. And in fact, the noise, I would argue that the noise, any additional noise being caused by this club is really mitigated by the fact that the club opens at midnight and is open till 7 a.m. So the people aren't really leaving the club until 7 a.m. And also they're not drunk when they're coming out. So they're not prone to screaming and yelling as drunk people seem to do, or fighting. Because I'm not dispensing any kind of alcohol or anything, and I'm allowing people to dance in this environment, I think it's providing a real alternative to what is the only thing available downtown right now, which is alcohol venues. I think it behooves the city to see, too, that I have, in the interim, the last license was mine, and in the interim, if I had been able to find any place within the city, stipulated area, 700, 800, 900 Granville, and the expanded CBD, if I'd been able to find anything more suitable than this, I certainly would have brought that before Council. I don't like going up against Council policy in this area. I regret to bring you something that's half a block outside the area. But the fact is, I think this is the best choice for the city. I've waited 6 years and tried to find something that is in the area that the city wants me to put this club. But I believe that this is the best viable alternative. There's a huge demand for these clubs, and the city should seriously consider allowing me to put this club there. And my final argument is that the noise impact of Gorgomish has been, my previous club has been so small that most of you are probably not even aware that the club exists. The signage on the street is barely there. These places are so popular that it really won't add any noise to the existing noise that's already on that street. There already is on that same block, one last thing I'd like to say, there already is 5 or 6 venues open till 3, probably disgorging people till at least 3:30 on Friday and Saturday nights. That street, that block is effectively noisy, just as 900 is, right up until about 4 a.m. All I'm asking for is for a license to allow this very profitable business somewhere to go downtown that makes sense for the city, that's in a venue that makes sense. And I think we'll demonstrate with our next presenters that we've gone to a lot of trouble to customize this venue to minimize the noise impact. Putting the club in the basement.
You're out of time.
Thank you very much, and please vote yes on 1062 Granville.
Thank you. I don't see any questions from council, so I'd like to invite our next speaker, who is Kelly Peterson, the landlord. Welcome.
Yes, I'm Kelly Peterson, and I just wanted to clarify that my family purchased this building about 3 years ago, and we bought the building, and we are the sole owners, and when we bought it, it was in quite a state of disrepair. The main floor with the double height and the basement were basically just shells. The basement has never been a rentable space. It wasn't ever high enough. So my family and I undertook a very extensive structural upgrade to the building at a cost of more than $1 million of my parents' retirement savings to dig out the entire basement subfloor, lowering the floor by 3 feet to provide an 11-foot ceiling height. We installed new rear stairs and emergency rear fire exit for the basement. We upgraded the sewer and water system to accommodate Mr. Morgan's proposed use. We upgraded the fire suppression system, installed an elevator allowing handicap access to the basement, installing an attractive new facade on the building, including a new glass awning in keeping up with the heritage character of the building. The building is 98 years old, by the way. We upgraded the electrical supply, installed a new front stairway and hallway to accommodate the proposed club, and we also installed a sunken floor to accommodate a sprung dance floor. Mr. Morgan approached my family more than 1.5 years ago during the initial construction about using the basement as a location for a new non-alcohol after-hours club. He carefully explained that while my family's building was technically outside the official zone by half a block, he was confident the city would agree that it was the most suitable available location. He explained that the city would favor the extensive upgrades to the building's envelope and the basement location, which would serve the twin purpose of helping to quell noise, and which would mean the club would not occupy street-level promenade space, which the city frowns upon, as clubs at street level create dead zones during the day. Mr. Morgan's proposal appealed to us because of the prospect of being able to rent out both the basement and the double-height ceiling floor to long-term high-value tenants, which would pay for the ongoing repairs and building upgrades, which would allow us to make a profit from the available commercial spaces without displacing the tenants in the residential hotel above. We are committed to maintaining the building and the residential hotel upstairs, but ask the city to allow us reasonable opportunity to recoup our investment and make some money from the property's main floor and basement commercial spaces. The commercial reality on the 1000 block of Granville is that a basement space is not going to be rentable 2010 and other than a nightclub, and if you don't grant this license, it will probably go unrented and will effectively cripple my family's ability to profit from the work we've done on the property. Granting the license will mean a profit for my family after our considerable investment in the building, fixing up the building, and allowing us to maintain this commitment to keeping the SRO hotel open and clean and safe. In short, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to ask on my family's behalf that you grant Mr. Morgan his license for the club. Thank you. Oh, and you have some pictures of the front of the building, which show the before and after of the new facade. And as well, there are a couple of photos of the basement during construction where you can see a bit of the severity of how much work we've done.
Thank you. You have a question from Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should question to staff. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're
question
welcome.
to staff is there are two in this whole city. There are only two other facilities of this kind. Can you explain what is the operation and what is the impact in the neighborhood? Does it really have the effect of sobering up people after the 3 o'clock partying and drinking?
There's mixed reviews on that issue. There's concerns around drugs associated with the late night venues. There is no alcohol involved, and it's a bit of a different operation in that there's a higher level of cover charge because obviously the operator is not making money from the sale of drinks. So this significant portion of the income comes from the cover charge and the sale of water and other types of beverage. There are some concerns, as police point out in their comments in the report. They have some issues with impacts, how the venues actually do impact, and how the patrons interact with other patrons along Granville Street. And so there are concerns adding additional patrons or people coming down specifically for that particular venue. So the bottom line is, yes, there are concerns, different types of concerns, and not alcohol related.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Ladner.
I wanted to ask about to Ms. Peterson. You fixed this place up, but it spent $1 million. But it's out. You knew it was outside the zone, and what were you thinking? Like, you were assuming that you would get some kind of exception from the, or does this mean you will apply for a bar license if you don't get this one?
Well, we're not in a position to apply for a license because we don't have experience in running that type of establishment.
Or find a licensed operator.
We have had several, probably about 3 different experienced bar owners seeking our space, the main floor, for a nightclub, and we've actually turned them down because we don't want that dark space on the street. But having the basement now available, that's something that they are also seeking because of the space available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ladner. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I've read the report carefully, but I don't see any mention of something that is of great need in the community from a number of nonprofits that have mentioned the need for a dance hall or a place to have events for dances for nonprofits. And I don't know whether this establishment was going to be prepared to rent out the establishment to nonprofits, and perhaps you could let me know whether that was one of the thinkings in the planning for this establishment.
For private parties and
for nonprofits, yes.
That would be up to Mr. Morgan because he would be the person leasing the property.
Perhaps he could give me that answer then.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question again?
My question was, there's a great need for use for nonprofits because there's almost nowhere in the city or in the downtown to have rental space for large events for nonprofits to hold events in the downtown
any
area.
usage like that. The thing is about after-hours licenses is that the practicable time of the business is Friday, Saturday, holiday, Sunday, between midnight and 7 a.m. The license allows for me to be open during the week, but the practicality is without alcohol, normally these kinds of businesses, the last club I opened, doesn't open during the week because it's not really, we're not up to competing with alcohol places, and that's not what we're doing. However, having said that, if there was room within the license, and I'd have to look more closely at it, for the venue to be used before 2 a.m. for this kind of, for any kind of other use, then I would certainly be open to that. Even to the point where having a dual license and being allowed to host not-for-profit people during the week and allowing them access to the space, I'd certainly be amenable to that. Because as it stands, I have no planned use during the week.
I see.
It's a nicely tailored space that's just going to waste, really.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Our next speaker is Janet Morgan.
Hello, councillors. My name is Janet Morgan, and I'm Jasper Morgan's mother. And I became involved with my son's business a number of years ago when he applied for and was granted a license for 695 Smythe Street. His subsequent loss of that club to a greedy partner before opening was so traumatic for our family that I resolved to help him with this next one if I could. I am not a wealthy woman, but I am Jasper's partner in this proposal. Since the granting of his last license in 2002, I have been very aware of my son's difficulty in finding a suitable location for this club. I know the planning department has allocated the 700, 800, and 900 blocks of Granville as the official zone for after-hours clubs, and I know that there was some discussion about widening the area to include part of the CBD. However, I witnessed my son's frustration trying to find a space suitable for a nightclub. I think one of those blocks is pretty well not usable because it's being more or less, there's construction going on there. I know that the planning department has allocated the 700, 800, and 900 blocks of Granville as the official zone for after-hours clubs, so I said that. Sorry. Trying to find a space suitable for a nightclub in this very restricted area while ensuring that it not be at street level or too near any number of the increasingly prevalent residential developments near the zone and in the CBD proper. When Jasper told me about the proposed location just half a block outside the zone, but still part of the de facto entertainment strip, it seemed likely our best available option given the somewhat restrictive guidelines for after-hours clubs in Vancouver. I think it behooves the city to offer my son, and in fact me, a reasonable opportunity to operate a legal business in a venue that makes sense for the city, a venue that is entirely suited for this purpose, a venue that is off the street, a venue that does allow the landlord to profit from his own good works, and a venue that, while it may be half a block outside the area, is the best option for Vancouver's next after-hours club. We are proposing this business at this location because we understand that while the planning department has an overall plan for the development of downtown, Mayor and Council have a responsibility to see that these plans don't unfairly restrict the opening of what is a very in-demand and profitable business. In short, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to grant my son his license for 1062 Granville. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Council, we have no further speakers. What is your will? Would anybody from Council like to put forward a motion? Folks, if you don't have any thoughts about this, you can always defer. Councillor Ladner, bless your heart.
I have a question. I have a question of the police about the. There's some differing information here. Do we have somebody here from the police? Oh, we don't. There's differing information here about the impact of the other club at Smythe Street, and I think the issue, the negative issue, is the. Well, actually, it's not even listed as one of the negative aspects. The size of the venue is one, and the ability of the police to get in is another one. But I think that clearly there's some question about what goes on here. I know there's no alcohol, but the question is what else happens that would be of concern. and there's some very mixed messages here. The owner says it's not an issue, and the police say that they've had issues. So I guess I can't get an answer on that.
Mr. Tegrobe.
All I can comment is that the police, that's a direct quote from the police. We've had a number of discussions with the police, and they definitely have concerns around these types of venues. They're not, not without issues. Certainly there are some issues, and as they indicate, they've had to attend on a number of occasions and deal with disturbances, fights, etc., and they definitely feel that there's an impact on the street, whether it's the lineup or whether it's patrons leaving throughout the later hours and early morning hours. And the smoking issue is also going to be an ongoing issue, which will be even worse under the new regulations. When people can't smoke directly outside the building, they'll have to move away from the building, and it's raising real concerns with all of the venues, how we're going to manage that.
Well, I don't think I'd want to go after this one particularly on the smoking question if it's going to affect all the venues. Because
I'm just commenting that there will be all of those issues will occur on this venue as with any other venue, so it will have some impacts on the street.
Did the police comment at all on the what the applicant described as a beneficial impact of sort of softening the sudden closing time and everybody heading out in the street at the same time, and they can filter through this place and dribble out till 7 in the morning? I know that's always been an issue with the police, that everybody jumps out of these clubs in fairly different states of disrepair at the same time, looking for a taxi at the same time and jostling the sidewalk at the same time. And if they could all go down here and debrief for a while, then maybe it would be better. I don't know.
I'm sure there's some benefits around that, although we still have the issue of the patrons leaving the other clubs, being on the street and trying to get into the after-hours clubs as well, and they all obviously can't get into the after-hours clubs, so there is certain demands around that. Certainly if people stay longer and are not consuming alcohol longer, there will be some benefit from that. It's very hard for us to tell exactly how that has worked and what the benefits are, because the later bar hours has also addressed that issue to some degree. Certainly the illegal venues have decreased since we've had the later bar hours.
Well, I'm also interested in knowing what goes on here. I can't imagine it's just drinking water that happens at these clubs, and some healthy dancing. And so I wish I would know more. Are there issues with guns? Are there issues with all sorts of other drugs that go on? I don't have that information here, because to me that would be the determining factor. I'm inclined to go with the staff recommendation, but when I really start to analyze the call against this thing, it's too big, which we could control, and the police don't have a statutory right to enter, which we could control. And then there's this section about the police don't support it because there have been issues at the other one, but they're very vague about what those issues are. And of course it's outside the boundary, but I'm not sure that half a block is crucial. Anyway, those are...
Well, and as one of the speakers mentioned, there's been quite an interest from liquor licensed operators to expand to this block as well, and part of the issue is, do we start expanding the entertainment options into the 1000 block? We've had a number of inquiries regarding this particular building and others in the 1000 block. We've been very clear with potential applicants that it's not within the policy and it wouldn't be supported by staff. So that will raise questions around, are we now expanding into the 1000 block or not, and what the policy is.
Just in my last 5 seconds here, when the province opened up all the restaurants and turned them into sort of de facto bars, did that affect, are there therefore liquor serving establishments on this block because of that, a lot of restaurants?
There are some issues with some of the restaurant food primary licenses on Granville, and the whole issue of hours of restaurants is a difficult one. It's an issue that we're working on now, because that's having an impact as well. Some are open till 2 a.m., some are closing earlier. So yes, it's had an impact. The restaurants are having a larger impact on all of the areas because of the change in the rules.
Thank you, Councillor Ladner. Councillor Louis.
Well, I'm glad to see people have got onto the board. The chair was sweating there for a bit, I think. What to do? Mr. Teckel, sorry. Just describe to me what a low impact use is.
Low impact was envisioned as being businesses that would cater to the residential community within the area, so it would include retail, restaurants, and earlier closing establishments. And the policy was very specific to eliminate what we would call higher impact businesses, including neighborhood pubs, cabarets, dance halls, etc., to try and create that break within that block, recognizing that residential will be a significant component in that area in the near future.
Okay, so you're saying, because I know there's a number of development applications further on in the 1100 and 1200 block of Granville that are coming, or adjacent streets in Howe and Seymour, you're saying that as a result of that additional introduction of residential, we should have a break, and that this is the first block after the 900 block. The issue with the overall size of these non-alcoholic uses, approved guidelines is 200. This application is for 300. If there was a limitation to the 200 or to a lower number, would that make any difference?
Well, it would make a difference. It would have a lesser impact. I guess the recommendation would still stand because of the policy issues, but when we did the analysis and looked at sizes of establishments, and when we actually developed the liquor policy for Granville Street, we envisioned premises all along that area of 200 seats or less, because the models we looked at in other cities, it certainly was very clear that the smaller establishments didn't have the same impact as the larger establishments had. And unfortunately, that whole premise went out the window around the liquor establishments when the liquor rules changed.
So is the 200 person guideline still relevant today? Because when was that guideline approved by council?
It was probably about 5 years ago, and I would suggest to you, yes, it is, because the larger the crowd, the more issues you have. Certainly if it's as the report mentions, if it's 220 or slightly over, the previous establishment, I believe, was approved at 230, which is significantly less than 300.
And just on the impacts of the other establishment, which was approved at 240, not in this location, but the police department has concerns, but again, like Councillor Ladner was saying, it's not quite spelled out for us. How long has that establishment been in operation?
Probably about 5 years, I would guess.
Since 2002, licensed in March 2002.
And so I'm assuming is that on a temporary development permit as well, or is it a outright use?
I believe it's a temporary development permit.
And if we're experiencing issues with it, typically a development permit is about 5 years. You know, are there plans, or is there something in the works that you would report to us to take away that temporary development permit would extinguish?
Up to this point, obviously, there haven't been significant enough issues to bring that issue back to council. It would be under constant review. I'm not aware of any intention to bring that forward in the near future.
So what I'm getting at is whether or not the actual experience in that other location, although outside the policy guidelines, has been better or worse than what we had expected to begin with, and we can use that as some indication of what this use on this site might be, and provide maybe a temporary development permit for a year and see what the experience is, and put it under review and pull it if it's not working out the way that we had originally thought. Put the limitation in terms of the overall capacity as well. But there might be some opportunities here to fill the space, perhaps limit the impact, and have it brought back to us. What's your thoughts on that?
I guess my comment would be that it is not straightforward to refuse the renewal of a development permit. There has to be significant issues associated with that. And what we're saying in this particular case and in other cases, there will be some issues related to this type of venue. Are they going to be significant enough for us to remove the use? Once it's in place, the tenant has done all the renovations, provided a significant investment in this particular location. We do not take the issue lightly of just removing use because it's having some impacts on the community. And if it is having some impacts and a number of other establishments are having impacts, it's all adding to the total impact in the area. Excuse me.
Thank you, Councillor Louis. Councillor Chow. Okay, thank you, Councillor Chow. Councillor Kevin.
Well, I think it's time to bite the bullet here. So I'm going to move that because Jasper Morgan has applied for a non-alcoholic cabaret at 1062 Granville Street, that Council endorse the request for a non-alcoholic cabaret dance hall in the basement of 1062 Granville Street, provided that police access and police concerns can be covered off as part of a good neighbor agreement. Simply put, we've got a situation here where the problem on Granville Street is drinking. And we have a facility that's coming in and saying, we're going to provide an alternative, non-alcoholic. And to basically turn this down, knowing full well that the next applicant will be coming in here and asking for a liquor establishment, strikes me as nuts. What we're doing here is trying to change the mix on Granville Street to put in a facility that in fact doesn't have alcohol and provides entertainment that doesn't have alcohol. And we're talking about essentially Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on long weekends. And the rest of the time it becomes a venue that can be used by non-profit groups or whatever as a fundraising venue that they can use as well. But for me, the compelling argument here is non-alcohol. And I think we're applying a lens to this thing that is an alcohol lens and saying, ooh, more problems in this area. The fact that it's half a block out, I think we cover off by saying non-alcohol. That's why we're making this exception to put this in this venue, because it is non-alcoholic. And I think that to me is a good rationale. And the reality is that all around this, we have facilities that, because of the provincial changes in legislation, are alcohol provisions. So the only thing that's different here is that this is non-alcohol. And I think that's a good thing, and that helps to change the mix and hopefully change the dynamic a little bit on Granville Street. So, okay, then we've got to deal with the next thing. Are we worried that all of the people who pour out of the bars are going to say, let's go into the non-alcoholic establishment? Don't think so. Don't think so. Those people are coming downtown to drink. And they're not going to, but by the same token, I absolutely want to make sure that the police have access to the place, because my concern is that people come in with something under their coat. And all of a sudden you've got a non-alcoholic establishment that, because of access rules, the police can't get into, and all of a sudden it becomes known as a place where, there's no alcohol there, but if you got your Mickey in your pocket, you're okay. And I don't want that. I want the police to be able to have full access to this, and I would assume that through a good neighbor agreement we could achieve that, where you would say, no, when the police want to come into our establishment, they are welcome, and we'll follow those procedures. So I think it's time to be a little bit positive and a little bit creative.
Thank you, Councillor Cadman. Councillor Ball to the motion.
To the motion, Councillor Cadman did bring up some issues that are mentioned on page 4, which is, it does say, therefore, unobstructed police access would have to be guaranteed through agreements between the City Police Department and the licensee. And it does mention that this has not been an issue with the 2 existing venues. So I'd like to It also says consideration should be given to the additional condition that these premises would have an identification scanner and search all patrons with a metal detector wand, as is presently done at liquor licensed establishments on Granville Street. And before I vote for this, I just want to be assured by staff that we can add these conditions.
We're just going over the conditions there. Staff recommendation to you would be, if council wanted to proceed with this application, to set a number of conditions, including specifying the good neighbor agreement, the temporary development permit, the police access agreement, mandatory identification scanner and wanding of patrons, and the police access agreement, and also the capacity issue needs to be addressed as well. We need to be specific around what the maximum capacity would be, and that would be a motion for council.
And that was 240 previous?
The last premise was 240.
240.
Okay, Councillor Ball?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Louis.
How many, so we're going outside of council policy if we approve of this, and so some questions arises. Do we know of other locations that could physically accommodate another one of these within the district? And that's my concern, is that we start opening the door and it becomes a de facto second wave in the area, and may in fact cause us unintended consequences. Could you enlighten us?
Yes, that's a real possibility. Excuse me. In fact, we have one potential application that we've been having discussions with, who is waiting to see the outcome of this particular application, and has another location outside the area, but not in close proximity to this.
On Granville Street, or?
Not on Granville.
But it's in the downtown core.
Yes.
And again, outside the area that we've deemed to be appropriate. But in your opinion then, having heard some of the comments, what would be the appropriate, if council were inclined to move forward with this, what would be the appropriate number of patrons? Given our council policy and given its physical location, it's a maximum. It isn't necessarily, there's not a minimum, right? So what could the area potentially handle in terms of patrons with this addition?
That's very difficult to say what the future impacts might be. What we're suggesting, the council policy is 200. The last premise was 240, which seems to work fairly well. So in that range, I think would be realistic. If the last one was approved at 240, it would be reasonable to set the limit at the same number, I would suggest.
Now, I've also heard that there's issue with good neighbors agreements as well, that it's sometimes hard to enforce, that we often hear challenges with our dense population in the downtown core, where noise and spill out from, albeit alcoholic premises and restaurants, cause problems in the local area. So I'm taking very seriously the spacing issue here. Now, what are we doing in terms of sound mitigation for the facility? You know,
this type of application would go through a full assessment as part of the development permit process, and would have to meet the current bylaw standards. And there's a special criteria for these types of venues. I don't believe it would be a significant issue of sound emanating from the building because of the location in the basement. And the issue would really be around the door and the access to patrons, which could be dealt with some kind of a double door system.
And we could enforce something similar to what we're experiencing on Granville further on down with lineups, and enforce something similar to that?
It would create the same issues, and we would expect the same solutions to that, yes.
Now, let me read this to you, and if you could clarify for me. Bylaw regulations and policies. Bylaw regulations require that dance halls close between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m., except on weekends weekends where they can operate 24 hours a day effectively from 7 a.m. through to Monday 2 a.m. So does that mean that this facility can stay open the whole weekend, basically?
Could, if they wish to do so. We've never had that occur. We've had some of the venues operate for special events. During Gay Pride, for instance, we've had some of them operate till 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. But economically, I just don't believe it's viable to continue for a 24-hour operation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Louis. Councillor Anton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a tricky one, but we do have a motion, don't we? I guess what concerns me, Madam Chair, is that the 1,000 block has so far been the transition zone that Mr. Tycrobe was suggesting, which was more. Maybe you could just tell us what you said earlier, restaurants, and what were you picturing in that transition zone?
Yes, limited food service, which would be takeout food service, restaurants, a lot of retail component as part of that, recognizing the residential not only in that block and the next block, but also directly across the lane from that particular block.
Okay, because I know we have policy, and earlier today we were certainly considering going against our own policies with regard to the Vogue Theatre. And to do this would be also to go against our own policies. However, I see this as being really quite a change in policy were we to accept this. The Vogue Theatre was kind of just going an incremental piece of changed policy, whereas this would require really changing the 1,000 block. It would give this 1,000 block Granville a completely different flavor, I think, and putting it more into the entertainment district, which is it's not there right now. And I know we do get lobbied once in a while, or the suggestion from people once in a while, that maybe the 1,000 block should be part of the entertainment district. I think, Mr. Tycrobe, you get those requests from time to time.
On a regular basis.
On a regular basis. But so far this council has not changed that policy, and I think that by approving this, we are actually backing into a new policy on that block. And I'm not sure that this is the right way to do that. I think if we want to change what that block looks like, then we should have that discussion, and then this should come forward in that context. But in the meantime, Madam Chair, I don't think that what we might do incrementally with the Vogue Theatre is something that we should do incrementally on the 1,000 block Granville Street. So even though I hear a lot of merit in the application, it's an interesting idea. Certainly seats that are not alcohol seats are an attractive proposition. I think that because that block simply is not there for that activity at the moment, I don't think that we should make that change just by approving this application, which is I'm quite convinced is what we would be doing. So, Madam Chair, I'm inclined not to support this, somewhat reluctantly, but I'm inclined not to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anton. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Based on this picture, who is occupying the second, third floor? Is it an office or residence?
The top five, there's 5 stories above the main floor, and that's an SRO.
Oh.
Single room occupancy hotel.
That's as they've been.
And it's going to stay that way. That's the landlord is only asking for this to help him make money with the main floor and the basement so that he can afford to. He's already upgraded the whole building, which the tenants benefit from. But he's asking the council give him the opportunity to make some money out of the rest of the building.
So the sound installation is also including the roof?
The reason why I approached the landlord about digging out the basement and actually creating a basement space for this club is because I understood that council wanted to, mitigate the noise as much as possible. And we believe by double drywalling and doing as much as we can within the city guidelines as to keeping the noise down, and by putting it in that basement space and having 2 floors between that and the SRO, that we're providing as much as can be expected as far as noise. And as Paul Tycrobe, I think, indicated, the main problem with noise with clubs isn't necessarily the thump, thump, thump of the beat. It's the people coming and going, and that's where the noise gets made. And I'd just like to point out, because there's been a lot of comments about this block, and I understand this is a transition block, but we've got to face the fact that there's already a very busy nightclub called the Stone Temple down the street, quite a bit down the street, that's open till 3 a.m. serving liquor on a Friday or Saturday night. So are we really changing this block's flavor? There's 2 other pubs on the same block on the same side of as where I'm proposing to put this, on the corner, 2 places, one above the other, that are both open till 3 a.m. There's one across the street from me that's open till 3 a.m. The fact is that on this block, in this zone, there is already a density of places that are open till 3 a.m. So if it was meant to be a transition zone, it's already kind of too late for that, is my argument. And the city has got to give me appreciate the fact at least that I've really tried to put it into the zone. I've tried to find a place in there. But when you restrict a business, and after hours are one of the most restrictive businesses in the city, if I wanted to open a strip joint or anything like that, I could do it more easily and would have more available opportunity than I do for this. And really all it is dancing, drinking water, and it goes a little bit later than a regular club. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, and I'd like to point out, as Paul Tygrove said, Ms. Cumerlato might have said, that this is not actually forcing the city to address any liquor issues. This is not a liquor establishment. This doesn't change council's policy, ongoing policy, about keeping that as a transition block. This is a separate kind of business that will not open the floodgates for these applications because it is not liquor. I'm not trying to jam another nightclub into that area like everybody else is. And this will not open the floodgates for liquor establishments to open that area because you guys are saying, no, we're allowing a non-alcohol place in here. This is supposed to be a solution to the problem, not add to the problem. That's all I'd say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Deal.
Yeah, I've got some questions as well. First of all, I had the question about the lineups, and that's been addressed. That this would also be dealing with the lineup issue, as Councillor Louis asked about already, because that would have to be dealt with. The police have certainly seen that made a difference for the other establishments. I'm curious as to, of these other types of businesses, take-out food, restaurants, and retail, this is an underground space, right?
This particular one, yes.
So can you help me envision what other types of businesses would work in an underground setting? I guess maybe some retail would?
Certainly restaurant would.
Yeah, the entire Pacific Center Mall. Yeah, okay. I'm just because I'm picturing it subterranean. My other question had to do with the space in between, and maybe this is better for the applicant. That would provide a buffer zone to the other establishments that both the SRO above and the other street level establishments. Do we know what's going in there, or perhaps? Yeah, please.
The landlord has currently not rented the upstairs space yet. It's a really unique space, and it's probably hopefully going to go to some sort of restaurant or something. It's a double height space, as I mentioned, so that's providing the extra buffer. It's actually got a mezzanine inside, and it's a beautiful space, and the landlord probably will be able to rent that to a restaurant or something like that. However, given that he's done all these improvements to the whole building, he was hoping, and I guess when speaking to his accountant, he needs to be able to make money out of that basement space, and he's already gone ahead and improved that space and improved the whole building.
I have to warn you off that argument, because that was done on spec, and
I understand that.
That was a risk that was taken.
Been done.
That's not a reason for us to make our decision.
No, I know.
So let me go to the issues that are the reasons for us to make a decision. It includes. I went and looked at your other website there for your other place, and it does refer to the blistering sound system and the Red Bull Slurpees making people happily prime till the wee hours, quote unquote.
So I don't actually own that other place, and I haven't owned that place since it opened.
That's the other one. Okay, that's your partner. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that the issue of noise and people coming out is a very real one, and it's not just water they're drinking. They're all hopped up on Red Bull, which I happen to have a weakness for myself. But I do want to acknowledge that people are going to be coming out. Well, they've been dancing, they've been flirting, they've been drinking caffeine.
They'll probably be coming out.
Yeah. So there'll be some happy people coming out, and whether it's alcohol or not. And managing that noise at the doorway has been addressed already. The lineups were addressed. That you mentioned that you don't really advertise. Yet you rely on the big lineups, and yet we've heard from the police that the lineups are a major issue. So if you could address that noise, the in-out noise, and a little bit, that would help.
Well, one of the reasons that we put Gorgamish where it is, at 695 Smythe, up on the third floor, and one of the reasons that I proposed this location, as opposed to going and asking for a license in what used to be a coffee shop, but it's in the right area, but it's on the street level. I didn't do that because this makes more sense. And the reason that it makes sense is because there's the noise mitigation being in the basement. There's also the fact that By being in the basement and having the entry come in, go around the corner, go down, hit a landing, and go down again, we can hold up to 70 people, as I did with my last after-hours club, inside the building, where they're not making noise on the street. I would even make a commitment to council that I will not have a standing line outside.
That would be...
I would also make a commitment to council that I will take a license of 200 people. We don't need to have 300. The only reason I propose that is the size of the venue downstairs. But if that's a concern to council, I'd gladly make it 200.
And no outside lineup, even though that's what you rely on for your advertising.
Absolutely, and the most strict kind of good neighbor agreement that the police want to have. I am actually a non-drinker myself. I don't like alcohol. I think it's a scourge of downtown. All I see is people coming out of nightclubs and fighting each other. Now, I realize there's not enough after-hours clubs to show the city the benefit that I'm talking about.
Well, and the two issues you're hearing here are A, management of the facility, the establishment, and B, policy. So I'm looking forward to the other councillors' questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deal. Councillor Chow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Councillor Anton talked about our own policy. So, Mr. Teklo, if we change this to 200-person limit, what does that mean in terms of our policy? Are we within our policy or very close to it, or what?
It deals with the capacity issue, which was one of the three concerns. So there would still be two outstanding concerns.
Yeah, okay. So, but the applicant has indicated that he will accept 200 persons. So on that, I would incline to go along with 200 persons in this trial.
Ciao. Councillor Letter.
I want to follow up the comment about the SRO upstairs, and maybe this is to the landlord, if we could get it's okay if we can ask her to come back?
Ms. Peterson.
There was some suggestion that there could be some financial lightening of the load on the rooms upstairs, lower rent, better quality rooms or something as a result of revenues downstairs. Is it really all linked? Is that really
Well, we definitely need to get some tenants in the main floor and the basement soon. I have my 07 financials from the accountant, and we've done a lot of fire safety upgrades, and a lot of the tenants, upon departure of the residency, they tend to trash the rooms, and we have to spend a lot of money getting new furniture, repaint the walls, and so it costs us a lot of money, and it makes it tough for us to be at the rental maximum of the SROs and still have a nice, clean, safe rooms for the tenants. What is your rent in the rooms? It averages at $385 per month. Well, Madam Chair, I want to support this. That's an interesting add-on to the discussion that hadn't come up earlier, which I think is beneficial. I also, to the point I raised earlier, I do think that it would help diffuse the rush, the 2 to 3 o'clock rush of boozed up people coming out of the clubs. And we've heard, if not today, certainly lots of times about the transportation problems. People can't get enough cabs, and they don't want to be in their cars in the state they're in. I also think that the issue that we should be most concerned about breaking policy is opening up more liquor establishments. Because I think if somebody's running a happy business, that this one had no opposition of any significance from the neighbors when we went out to them, the people don't mind. I mean, why are we against it? I think we do have reason to be concerned about more alcohol, but this does not have alcohol. And I think people want it, and I think that we should be trying to accommodate what people want if it has no adverse impacts on the city. And I'm actually the description, Mr. Jasper's description of that zone being effectively in the entertainment zone. When I've ever walked down there at night, I've never realized I was going out of the entertainment zone and coming back in again when I got to the Stone Temple and the Ale. Yeah. So, and there's lots of people seeming to be walking down there just as though it were an entertainment zone. And with the changing of the status of all those restaurants, turning them into virtual bars, I think that's kind of a subtle point that's lost on anybody except our policy wonks around the city, of which I would consider myself one, but not on this one. And finally, I think that we should always bear in mind that we should be trying to provide a variety of fun in the city that doesn't cause any harm. And the more people can have fun without drinking, I think is a good thing. So I don't like to go against staff, but I appreciate the staff has to adhere to policy. And I think this is a departure from policy, but I don't think it's one that is going to have a major impact or result in
a lot of problems. And I would be prepared to draw the line if people did come in here and say, well, you allowed this one, so now you've got to let my place 3 blocks away be part of something, be allowed, or we got to allow my liquor establishment to be allowed because you let this non-liquor one in. So I'm going to vote in favor of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ladner. Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Before I go to Councillor Lee, I personally still have a lot of outstanding questions with regards to the VPD, and I noticed Superintendent Warren Lemke is in the hallway here for the Civil City matter. So I'm wondering if while we take questions from Councillor Lee and Louis, perhaps Mr. Teckrobe, one of you can brief him on the issue we're talking about and see if he can weigh in on it. Councillor Lee.
Yes. Just a quick question to the owner. You just mentioned that you can guarantee that there will be no lineup in front. How can you do that?
Oh, well,
you will say that
what I meant was, if there's provision, if the city has some framework within which to make some sort of promise like this, if there's some way for the city to lay out a requirement like that, perhaps if they've done it somewhere else or something, then I would certainly adhere to whatever. I'm confident. What I'm saying is I'm confident that, given the way I've designed this with this stairwell holding area, that we can keep outside noise to a minimum. And I understand, and in choosing this location, I understood that the coming and going and the noise on the street is what is the noise. And therefore, I think that I'm very confident in saying that we can keep the lineup to a minimum, and I would even agree to the extreme condition, because I understand we're on the knife edge here with this application. I would agree to any kind of conditions as far as keeping the noise off the street and really having zero impact on that block. I'm committed to having zero impact. I think that this club will have zero impact as far as noise. And as Councillor Ladner said, I really think that it behooves the city to start to look at other options, other paradigms for people, and not continue to push alcohol and dancing together like that.
I sure appreciate the non-alcohol part of this the discussion. But you mentioned the only water. You do provide milk and orange juice, right?
Whatever is sort of a big seller. Typically, you don't want anything sticky. You get all the furniture and all over the floor.
Thank you.
So water is typically
no sticky thing.
Just Red Bull. People like Red Bull, but water typically is all you're serving.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Louis.
Just familiarize me with the age bracket or the patrons that come. You know, with alcohol, there's a age restriction before you can enter these premises.
Yeah.
How do these facilities operate?
With the Good Neighbor, I believe it was the Good Neighbor agreement with my last club that stipulates not only the police have statutory access at all times, which I encourage and is fine with me, but people under the age of 19, just like a regular bar, even though there's no liquor, we don't allow anybody in, and I completely agree with that, because although we're not serving liquor, this is an adult situation. You're open on the weekend. There's a lot of adults there, some of whom may or may not be drunk. You don't want minors in there, and that's perfectly fine. I don't want that kind of clientele anyway. The typical age range of clients is, say, 20 to 40, all in that area.
Okay. I've missed the age bracket, apparently. Councillor Ladner has decreed. Perhaps to Superintendent Lemke. I almost got it wrong again, but...
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm assuming that Mr. Teckrobe has briefed you slightly on the issue, and I'm assuming that you're familiar. Let's hear from the police perspective on why the police are against this application.
Well, the venue itself, I understand, is not going to be serving alcohol, whether it's juice or milk or water or whatever it's going to be. The difficulties that we have are the type of clientele that are attracted to these type of facilities, even though alcohol is not served. Without mentioning the names of other premises that are in the area that are after-hours clubs, we have had gang activity in these venues, so much so that we've done undercover operations in them, targeting these gang people. We even had a shooting several months ago that occurred shortly after people left one of these venues in the area of the Granville Mall. So it does happen. Even though alcohol is not there, it is another venue for people to go to. It attracts a certain type of clientele, certain type of music, and you can have difficulties. My concern also is that we have only just recently been coming to grips with some of the issues in the entertainment district. I certainly would like to see us keep things where they are right now while we develop further activities with the street closures in the summer and try to get a handle on things throughout 2008 and see what 2009 and 2010 brings. I'm very concerned about adding more seats, whether or not they're alcohol-based, to that area. And alcohol or not, it's going to attract a certain type of clientele that has the potential for causing us problems.
And so based on the experience of these other facilities, is there anything that we could do differently with this new applicant, now that we have the opportunity perhaps to put restrictions prior to approval? What would you do differently?
Well, I understand about the Good Neighbor Agreement, about giving the police the access to the premise. It's going to boil down to very strong management that's going to have the courage to stand up and confront and say, no, you're not coming into this facility. That doesn't always happen. So we put in all these rules. We've even had bar watch bars that are no longer bar watch bars because they do not cooperate. They do not do what they said they were going to do. And it's a gamble. It truly is. Whenever you open these facilities, they become the popular place to go to. They're new, they're exciting, it's where people want to go. And that's not just the legitimate people that are out for a night on the town. It attracts the gang types.
Okay, so we know you're very concerned. But I'm looking for what we can physically, tangibly do to ensure that this facility has the best chance to be successful if we approve of it. What could we introduce without hamstringing the operation? Like, don't say we'd approve of a facility for 10 people, right? Like that would make it unfeasible. But give them an opportunity to succeed, but ensure that we have the tools necessary to control the situation. Could we do anything differently, or anything that we've learned from the other facilities?
It's going to boil down to a lot of communication, coordination, cooperation between the Vancouver Police Department and the management of the facility. Again, the Good Neighbor Agreement with us having unfettered access to the premise, very important. It'll have to be, we'll have to be assured that we'll go in at any time. We'll have to be assured that if they have problems with gangs, that they'll call us. We're going to have this cooperation, coordination. It's council's choice, of course. I don't want to see any more seats down there right now. But it will be up to us and the management of this facility to make sure that it runs properly after, if council does approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Louie. I see a lot of second and third timers, so I'm just going to quickly insert a question. Thank you, Superintendent Lemke, for... No, stay. I'm going to ask a question to you for jumping in on this and helping us out. Nobody's really asked questions about drugs. Can you address the question of drugs and your knowledge of drug use in these types of facilities?
In any of these facilities, it's always an issue. You've got the, although again that they're serving non-alcoholic beverages, you've got the problems with GHB, with cocaine, with any kind of narcotic that could be used in the place. Hard to monitor. I know that they will do their best to search people as they come into facilities, but drugs are there. It's part of the scene down there, and it can end up being a problem. So when you have drugs, you have profit to be made by that. People are going to be selling drugs. There's gang activity. Gangs are drug-based. It's all part and parcel of the same thing. Again, it will take a lot of work and a lot of cooperation between us and the management of this facility, if approved, to make sure that it's run properly.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. Superintendent Lemke, in this report, it says that the police recommend that consideration should be given to the additional condition that these premises should have an identification scanner and search all patrons with a metal detector wand, as is presently done at liquor license calls. If this were to go through, and that was made a condition before it opened, are you standing behind that recommendation? And I have one more question. You mentioned that some bars drop out of the bar watch. Is there a reason why we can't then close those establishments when that happens?
Bars don't usually drop out of the bar watch. They're bar watch the partnership with them is removed by us.
I see.
Because we see that they're not holding up to their end of the bargain. Either they're allowing gangsters to come in, or they're doing something that tells us, no, we're not going to be partners with them in this. It's up to council then to deal with licensing and determine whether or not they've breached a bylaw or a law that's sufficient enough to take action against them. With regard to the scanning and the wanding, absolutely at a minimum, trioscope scanning or whatever system they use, but they should coordinate that with the other bars in the area too, so that they know who's walking around downtown. They should be talking to the other bars so that if a gangster is refused entrance to a certain bar downtown, they're not going to end up in the after-hours bar after. There's got to be a lot of coordination, a lot of talking. Everybody has to be on the same page to create that environment that I talked about a long time ago here, which is a fun place for people to come to in the entertainment district. And if 200 more seats are added, alcohol or not, it's going to take a lot of work to make sure that that place is run properly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Ladner.
I wanted to ask the operator a question about hours, because Superintendent Lemke's concern is adding the seats, but when do you open?
Midnight is typically midnight Friday and midnight Saturday, and then holiday Sunday. Those are the only nights you're open, and you stay open until 7 a.m. That's my previous after-hours club. And
what is, you charge quite a lot to get into these things, don't you?
You charge what the market will bear. Initially, with my last club, we were intending to charge $20, but the demand is such that that $40 is how much people have been paying for 5 years. It shows the demand. And the other thing is I don't want to disagree with police, but we're not trolling. We're not trolling for whoever will come in, okay, with these. So if there's people who are suspect and maybe gang members and so forth, it's very easy for us to just reject those people because there's a lineup of people who want to come in. These places are very popular. We can pick and choose well-behaved people who are not involved with gang activity. I run a very tight ship, and I will be running the place myself. And I will certainly agree to all manner of bar watch and so forth. I think bar watch has never done quite as much as it promised, but I'm certainly in complete support of doing all those things because they help us. And I think that far from bringing more people to the area, all this will mean is that 200 people who were going to be in the area anyway have another option, have another possible, let's just go there and dance, you know? It's another idea.
That's what I was trying to get at. I'm not, the way I can see it working is people who are already there would come into your place.
Yeah.
But furthermore, if I paid $40 to come into some place, I'd want to hang around for a little while,
yeah,
get my money's worth. So I would probably want to be coming out at 3, 4, 5, 6 or something like that when things have died down in the rest of the place. So I think it may be more of another place for the people already there to go, or a place where people want to come down and they'll stay by the time they get out. The scene will have gone out in the street. And it's always a problem when you say that it'll attract gangs and guns, but we went through this with the fireworks. The logical extension of that argument is we shouldn't allow anything because the gangsters will come in and play there
those people
and get in trouble.
Those people and those issues are certainly not after hours alone. I mean, those issues, gangs, drugs, those are going on in all bars.
And lots of
after hours
restaurants
by no means is more attractive. If anything, those people who are taking drugs, who are involved with gangs, they like having liquor around. They're more attracted to a regular nightclub than they are to something like what I'm running. That's my argument.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ladner. Councillor Anton.
Madam Chair, on the question of succession and the ability, we can have an operator right now who has all kinds of good and genuinely good, I'm not doubting them, intentions, but were he to sell the business, something, he needs to leave town, wants to quit. How do these good neighbor agreements track from one business to the next?
Well, what happens if there's a new operator makes an application? We go through exactly the same process with the new operator. So we set up a good neighbor agreement. We set all the same conditions on the license, so they would apply to the new operator. And in fact, almost all cases, any potential new operator would be coming in, talking to us ahead of time. They'd be apprised of what kind of conditions were already in place and would be expected of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anton. Councillor Lee.
Yes, I would like to hear from the superintendent that what do you think about the fact that it's a non-alcohol facilities and the people coming out at 3 o'clock impaired by alcohol have a place to stay to sober up until 7 o'clock? Do you buy in this? And do you think that will actually help to mitigate the 3 o'clock impact to the community?
Well, I think, first of all, you're talking about, I understand, 200 seats? 200 seats out of 6,700 in the area. So it's a very small group, albeit one less impaired driver on the roads. Excellent. So that's not my concern. If I knew for sure that people that were either in there at 12 when they were open were all legitimate people, or at 3 o'clock in the morning when the bars closed, legitimate people went into that facility, I'm happy with that. My concern is the potential for problem here with regard to the gang issue in the entertainment district. I'm very hesitant because of my experience down there now as the inspector in charge in District 1 and now as the superintendent over the last year and a bit about all the positive moves forward we have made. To start adding more seats down there right now, I worry about that. I worry about taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And that's my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Deal.
Just a final question. Councillor Cadman's motion didn't include a limit of 200 and no outside lineups. Can we add that in?